Everyone. We're so excited to be here. And before I get started, I know you want to know what in the world is going on with this. So, it was a doubles tournament. My husband was on the right, and he did not do this to me. It wasn't him. There was a lob over my head. I pedaled backwards, never saw it coming, have never fallen in my life, went down, 2 broken wrists. Life goes on, what can I tell you? So anyway, we're really, really happy to be here. I thank my husband for actually flying with me down here so that I can get here. And we're going to be talking about scaling from 50 to 700 employees. And so I'm Cindy Praeger, co-founder of Rhythm Systems. And with me is one of our great and amazing clients, Randy Carr. He is the one that runs a manufacturing firm that has scaled. So a little bit of background on data. Data is very, very important to us, systems and processes. So at Rhythm Systems, I'm the co-founder, serial entrepreneur, run 4 companies. And in the last 12 years, we have helped middle market growth companies create over 10,000 growth plans. And we put those plans into software, which then converts it into annual plans, quarterly plans, weekly, and individual dashboards. And it does that for the executive team, for the departments, cross-functional teams, and individuals. And so we've been in the unique position to see in 12 years what growth plans play out, what data and what decisions and KPIs actually help companies grow. Many of our companies have been funded recently by PE firms. Many have exited to great fanfare. And so today, I have with me Randy Carr. He has scaled operations. We started with him at 50 employees, now has 700. And he's going to share with us a little bit about his story and how we've worked together to grow. And our promise to you is that you'll get one practical idea from us that will help you to grow your business. So Randy, let's start. Tell us a little bit about World Emblem.
Thanks, Cindy. I'm really glad to be here. World Emblem is the #1 manufacturer and designer of badging and labels. Our business started in 1993 with 3 people, and we now have 700, as Cindy said. I think the interesting thing about our organization is the fact that we manufacture 500,000 pieces a day at 8 locations in 5 countries, half of which are shipped the same day. So we receive the orders at 12 o'clock and we ship them all by 8 o'clock at night. So that's really the basis of what makes us unique, is our use of technology and our speed of manufacturing.
So Randy and I wanted to make sure we customized this a little bit for you. And what we have found in the last 12 years in our data is, in addition to running your day-to-day company, the major growth only happens from a handful of moves. And so I'd like to ask you, how many of you, whether you're PE firms with your portfolio companies, think about them, or you're the leaders of an industrial company, how many of you, by raise of hands, on your strategic plan, you're growing by expanding markets? I am, Randy is, anyone else is? How about scaling operations? Anyone working on that? Yep, see a lot of that. Mergers and acquisitions, growing that way? Absolutely. Launching new products, how many people are doing that? We are too at Rhythm Systems, I know Randy is. And attracting, retaining, and growing talent. So what we have found that's very unique is this is hard. If you look at the data, Harvard Business Review says over 70% of new product launches fail. 83% of mergers and acquisitions fail. In fact, Tom Stewart and I, from the previous session, did a webinar on this. It's really hard to win. And what's even harder and more unique for growing middle market companies is this. If you delve into 12 years of data and those plans, every one of those top moves require cross-functional execution. You cannot do an M&A in a silo. You cannot launch products in a silo. We've talked a lot about IoT and other things today. You cannot do that in a silo. You need cross-functional planning and execution. Statistics are not good. If you ask a department, what percentage can you rely on your own department? 83%. That's good. That's where you grew up. But if you ask a department, how likely is it that another department is going to deliver to you what you need in order for you to be successful in a cross-functional priority or growth objective? 9%. We did a white paper on this. Welcome you at the end. You'll be able to get that research. But it is one of the main reasons why the ability to do cross-functional planning and execution is really hard. And if you want to get high valuations for your company or get growth done, you got to get really good at it. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what does that growth playbook look like. We're going to have Randy actually walk through very specific examples in his company to show you how do you scale, how do you execute growth when you have a day job to run. So Randy, we promised everybody here in our title that we would talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with the ugly. What in the world was going on in 2011?
So I think I told you this earlier today, but when we met, we had a controller come in and he says to me, like, what are you guys doing? How are you running your business this way? You guys can't run, you can't plan from day to day, let alone do an annual plan. So my life was just continuous chaos. From one problem to another, I had employee customer issues, we had late orders. Not to say that we don't have some of that now, but at least now we're really focused on the bigger picture. But my day-to-day world was just wild swings from left to right. So I didn't know from 1 hour to the next what I was going to be dealing with.
Yeah, when we met you in 2011, you really wanted to stop the chaos. You said stop those wild swings.
Yep.
And make space, because it was really hard to focus on growth. How are you supposed to sit down and think and focus on growth and strategy when basically you're playing whack-a-mole day to day? So as we prepared for this, it was interesting. Randy talked about the fact that you can logically know that you want to have better processes and systems. But if you look at the book Switch, in order to make change when change is hard, you not only have to be logical, you have to be emotional. Everyone in your company has to be committed emotionally to want to do that as well. And so Randy reminded me of a slide that we had, that he had seen, and how he emotionally gets charged up to say, I'm going to be more disciplined and have disciplined execution. So walk us through this slide. I thought this was interesting.
I mean, it pretty much speaks for itself, but at the end of the day, my executive team has 8 people, and I'm the acting CEO right now. I have been for the last 27 years. We have 700 employees in the business. So this slide just sort of give me a visualization of every little decision that we made, for good or for bad, what sort of impact it has on every single one of my employees. So something for me that's simple, like to buy a piece of maintenance software 15 years ago, we had 5 people. We're now still trying to dislodge that software and get it out from under the environment, and it's cost us millions of dollars to pull all that stuff out. So every little decision we make now has this cataclysmic long-term effect on the business, and this slide kind of typifies that.
Yeah. So Randy, if you could share with us your growth playbook, how do you think about scaling and growing with discipline now?
Yeah, no problem. This is pretty straightforward for me. We have 4 real things that we do. The first one is we have to determine the right 3 to 5 year growth strategy. And we do that by really, first of all, we look at a long-term vision for our 10-year plan. We break that down to 3 to 5 years. And then we isolate 1 to 3 things per year that we're going to focus on. The second thing we do is we develop a solid plan, and we cascade that plan right down to the individual that's going to be doing the work. The third one is we involve cross-functional teams. So we actually, like I said earlier, we have 8 locations in 5 different countries, 3 different languages, on 2 continents. So the thing for us to make sure we involve cross-functional teams is to make sure that we get everybody involved that's actually going to be doing the work to make sure each priority is successful And the fourth one is what we call the 5-day rule. And that is to make sure we check in every week as an organizational team, all the way down to the individuals that are working, to make sure that the priorities are on pace for the quarter and for the year.
Super. So let's dive down into each one, and hopefully you'll be able to get one practical idea that you can take home. So let's talk about tips to determine the right 3 to 5 year growth strategy. I know you work hard with Liz. I don't know where Liz is. You're a rhythm consultant, but there she is. Hello. So talk about 2 different scenarios. What happened in the beginning of your company, and then what happened later on, the challenges you faced.
Yeah, so again, I think I said this earlier, but we started with 3 people in Medley, Florida, which is like down the road, in a small warehouse. We're now the largest embroiderer in North and South America with 3,500 embroidery machines under roof. That picture was one of the pictures of our location. We grew it on one market with one customer, like a typical family business. As the business grew, we continued down that one market, and by 2011, when we originally met, we dominated the industry, but the industry itself was limiting. So there was lots of consolidation going on in the industry. People were going out of business. So we ended up with 70, 80, or even 90% of our revenue coming from one base of clients. And that was a major issue for us. It was an issue for the banks. It was an issue for me leaving the business to my family. So we needed to do something to get that broken down.
So it was interesting. You knew you had to diversify into other industries. But remember, we talked about the research in the book Switch. Everybody else didn't believe. Logically, they had to do this. So you did something very interesting. Tell us a little bit about what you did to get your team on board.
So it sounds pretty simple. This is Tervis Tumbler. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this company, but they're a North Florida cup manufacturer. They're similar to our culture. So we just fell in love with them as an organization. We wanted them as a customer. So we basically isolated them in our list of diversified clients. They buy exactly what we sell, which is embroidered emblems. You can see it inside the cup, and anybody who buys a Tervis cup kind of knows this. So we fell in love with them as an organization, so we just said, we're gonna get this customer. So a group of us went up back and forth to North Florida. It had to be 50 trips. There was one trip with 10 of us in a van. We brought people in from Mexico and from Canada. After 2 years, and like very determined focus, we landed this account. And we still don't have all of it, but it's a very solid customer of ours. And it's definitely diversified, which is what we like.
So what was interesting is strategically you had a focus on what you wanted to do. You had actually a dream list of customers. But when you made this cultural shift and you won this client, what happened to your team? Tell us a little bit about what happened.
So I'm a big space guy, so I talk to my team about space. When you create space, you're able to see sort of the things that you never saw before. So by earning this particular customer, we're able to see that there's all these other opportunities that are out there by just making little tiny adjustments in how we ran the company.
And as you can see now, you had I think you shared with me, you had a dream list of these clients, and you now have 50% of those logos.
Yep, we still do, actually.
List.
The dream list is only bigger, but yeah.
Yeah, a little bigger now. Fantastic. So when you have more opportunity than you could digest, now life is very different. Your team is going out, they see opportunities everywhere. How do you go through and determine which ones that you're going to accept with your limited resources and time, and which ones you're going to say no to?
Right, so this slide here is a picture of what we call winning moves, or how we identify our priorities in the business. We spend one, maybe a half day or a full day focused on just the things that we care about that's going to prop the business forward, either grow our revenue more than 50% or cut costs. Our executive team puts a score on the either impact on revenue, the ability to execute, and based on the scores, we pick 1 to 3, and only 1 to 3 things that we're going to focus on for the year or for the period, maybe two quarters, a quarter, depending on what we think the benefit's going to be. So in this case, we would rate the things, and the 1 to 3 we would come up with, and then we would identify them or assign them to somebody on the executive team, and each executive would only get one priority.
And so it's interesting, having worked with clients for a long time, most of our clients were very singular. They were looking at the impact on revenue. But what we found out when we looked at the data of the clients that won, they actually needed to plot two things. They would plot the impact on revenue and or profit, so that was a slight change that we made, but they would also plot their ability to execute. Speed of getting to market was a huge, huge advantage. And so if you're looking at things that you have the internal capability to execute, or you can quickly partner with somebody, that would be all the way to the right on the x-axis, and your impact of revenue is high, so the upper right-hand margin is the winning move that you want to pursue. So we were very, very diligent with that. I will also tell you in mid-market companies, as they're growing, and especially for those that are funding mid-market companies, these are the biggest bets. This is where you're deploying your money. And so we do not have our clients go and execute immediately. The next step that they do is they actually write down a list of assumptions, and they assign that to somebody and make sure that they're accountable to get those assumptions validated. So either you have to make an adjustment before you deploy the big bucks, or you have to validate, at which point you can move on. I see a lot of you taking pictures of this. We are happy to give this to you. You can go to rhythmsystems.com, pull that down on our site and our blog. There's lots of stuff on that for you. Welcome to do that. So life is a little different now.
Yep.
Now you've grown. Now you've opened up these markets. There's opportunity everywhere. And you're digesting multiple whales at once. So let's talk a little bit about internal operations and how you go about and scale. Maybe you could share one specific example.
Yeah, so last year we were fortunate enough to earn one client that would add 8% to our top line sales. In order to implement this customer, we had to deploy our staff to 50 locations around the US and Canada. We had to load and redraw 50,000 designs and add 50,000 items to our back office ERP software. We had to train our client and our own employees on the idiosyncrasies of the client relationship, how the client ordered, kind of our products versus our competitors' products, and we had to do it in 6 months. It took the work of over 100 people. In this case, it happened to be 3 countries in 5 locations. So in order to do that, we had to maximize using software and education to make sure that our cross-functional teams worked well together.
So what's the playbook for this? Tell us a little bit about your playbook, and let's dive deep into how you're going to consume multiple of these whales, these customers, and run your business simultaneously.
Yeah, we just need to make sure we have a solid plan. As I said earlier, we cascade that plan again to individuals that are actually doing the work, and make sure we have cross-functional teams, and I said that also before, and these are the 2 biggest things we do.
So tell us your specific playbook, step by step.
Yeah, no problem. So in this case, again, Liz is here. She happens to be our consultant. We're fortunate enough to have our own person come in and help us with our annual and quarterly plans. For me, just because the kind of person I am, I get distracted very easily. So she comes in and makes sure that I can focus on what we need to be doing organizationally. So for us, we create an annual company plan, and then we break that into 4 quarters. We make sure, again, that we have 1 to 3 solid priorities as a company and no more. We cascade that plan, again, down to the individuals that are doing the work through my 2nd and 3rd layer teams. So it can be down to an individual that's actually working in one of our factories. And we translate it into actionable steps, making sure to have solid success criteria and red, yellow, greens on the success criteria, making sure that they're quantifiable and they're measurable to make sure that we know if somebody's not going to perform at what we need to be done for the quarter.
Yeah. So as you're running the rhythm of the business, you can plan annually, you can plan quarterly, but the 700 people are working daily and weekly. So when you translate it into actionable steps, we actually use visual dashboards, which allow teams to be able to see how they're performing, but it also allows you, actually, as you're on the road, to just press a button and drill down and see everything across the company. So can you walk us through, this is actually a real dashboard, so Randy was very brave to share it, although this one's a good one, 2018. Walk us through how you set up one of your main growth priorities in a dashboard.
Yeah, sure. This one's different than the one I showed this morning, which happened to be all red. But this particular one is our second quarter. This is our second quarter priority for 2018. The priority name is Scale Flex Style. I don't know, our exhibition stand is at the back left corner here, and we're giving away hats with this product on it. This product took us 5 years to develop. It's a revolutionary garment decoration technology. This is right after we finally got the product to the point where we could start selling it. So you see here at the top, the parent priority is owned by our Senior VP of Sales, Nick Restrepo. His responsibility here that's due by June 30th is to sell $500,000 worth of the product. Under it are 3 sub-priorities. The first one is my managing director in Mexico. His responsibility here is to build the infrastructure to be able to support 100,000 pieces a week, which we figured quantified up to the $500,000 for the quarter. The second one is our director of marketing, Erin, and her responsibility is to bring in a certain amount of leads to make sure that we have enough leads in our funnel to make sure that our sales team can actually sell. And the third one is to onboard one contractual customer that we had already in the pipeline to get them up to $87,500 for the quarter, which is green. You know, obviously we want the $125,000, which is greater, which we call super green, which is just excellent. But our budgeted anticipated revenue was $87,500. So, and this is actually for the quarter for that period.
Yeah. So one of the important things is that when you're doing annual and quarterly planning, specifically quarterly planning, if all you're doing is telling people we have to scale flex style, they don't know what to do. So you want to make your quarterly plan operational and execution ready. However you want to display the data, this happens to be in our software, you want to be able to make sure you have a couple of things on that dashboard that people are looking at every week. One is what it is you want to do. For everything that you do, you want to make sure you have a success criteria. One of the things that really messes up our companies is that management thinks that winning is X, and the people doing the work think winning is Y. There's a big disconnect. And until they actually gather together, they never realize that there's a disconnect. So make it clear. We happen to use in execution language red, yellow, green, and super green. Green means you hit the goal. Red is failure. It's not you tried hard and that was good enough. It is failure. It's analytical failure. Yellow's in between, and super green, you knock it out of the park. For every priority, make sure you assign one and only one owner. I am not saying that owner does all the work. What I'm saying is that owner is in charge of coming to your weekly meeting and sharing how that project is going, forecasting whether you're on track, telling you the data, and then telling you the story behind the data. Why is this not going well? So these are the things that you want to make sure that you have. When you finish quarterly planning, your plan is not complete until you build execution-ready dashboards so every individual department and cross-functional team knows what to do. So let's walk through that, and this is Randy's final point on the things he wanted to share in his growth playbook.
Yeah, I alluded to this earlier, but I think the biggest thing is to make sure that every 5 days we check in on every one of the priorities. So the people that work for me, I mean, I was here at 10 o'clock this morning, and we have our executive leadership meeting every single week. I was in the lobby here on my rhythm call, making sure, checking in on the things that matter to us organizationally. So we have 7 or 8 things that I have to watch, revenue, cash, things like that, and I'm watching it every week, and I have my team statusing to me in the dashboards that cascade all the way through, and we don't miss meetings. So even if we're traveling or on planes, people status in the software, and we're able to kind of see and respond back to what's going on. And it's very helpful for me personally to know kind of where we're at organizationally at least once a week. So I really don't have to wake up and worry about, oh my God, are we gonna run out of cash, or where are our sales? I know it at all times.
Got it. So walk us through when you converted your quarterly dashboards into weekly dashboards. Show us how you run a weekly meeting.
So this is the same slide, except this is a slide by week. What you're looking at here, again, is Nick. Nick's responsibility, again, is to sell $500,000 for the quarter. He starts off gray, which means he hasn't actually worked on it. Then he goes straight into yellow, which means that he hasn't been selling. And I believe the pace on this one, if I remember correctly, was something like $38,000 a week he needed to bring in. So he started the quarter already in trouble. So we knew it out of the gate, the first week, that we were going to have a revenue issue, and he needed to catch up week 2 and week 3 and week 4. So, I mean, fortunately, we came out okay, but we knew this right out of the gate. If you look at Alberto, everybody's green here, so this isn't the greatest picture to sort of display kind of what I'm talking about, but in Alberto's case, it would be the same scenario, and everybody else is below. Everybody had a responsibility to do, and there were plenty of subtasks that were under this to get people to be able to build a flex style infrastructure as equipment and inventory and that sort of stuff, making sure that the workflow is right, getting the Six Sigma teams involved, making sure that our processes were documented. The marketing is the same thing, making sure the marketing automation software is set up. So we had all these kinds of subcategories that were built into this one priority. And as people's status, I knew from my desk that we were going to be okay.
And so one of the most important things, and if this is the tip you want to take back, this is one of the most critical things. The best companies' weekly meetings, 80% of the time is on problem solving. In fact, most of our consultants, they sit in on the weekly meetings, and that's one of the conversions they make. You do not want to have 80% of your time talking about status. It doesn't matter. If you have a lot of greens and you're talking about history and status, that is not what you want to put your most expensive people in the room to be working on. Those companies that project, pace, solve problems faster do better. But in order to do that, you not only need data that tells you where you are or where you're not. So this is very easy. You're going to focus on the yellows. Don't focus on the greens. You need insight. Prior to your weekly meeting, I would challenge you to have every one of those executives coming in that meeting tell you if something's on track or not, but they must tell you why. How am I supposed to deal with this if you're coming to a meeting and I ask you, well, why is it off track? Oh, I'll go find out. I'll tell you next week. You're way too slow. Your competitors are killing you there. You've got to know why. So that's one of the things I would encourage you to do. In our system, it actually alerts people by email, so they'll converse back and forth and tell you extra data that they want you to bring. Come ready to solve problems. It's one of the most important things our companies do. So we talked about today 4 things that, Randy does a lot of great stuff, and I want to really congratulate him. He's an amazing CEO, very humble. His employees love him, and he's worked really, really hard on a lot of things that we do to improve the processes and systems to be able to eliminate those wild swings and grow. We talked about determining the 3 to 5 year growth strategy and how he picks it. We talked about cascading your plan and making it abundantly clear what every person, department, and cross-functional team needs to do. We talked about keeping that pace going with cross-functional teams in weekly meetings and following his 5-day rule, which we call the weekly adjustment meeting, 80% problem solving. So we started out 2011, kind of ugly, not ugly anymore, and the biggest thing Randy wanted is no more wild swings. Stop playing whack-a-mole. So first, congratulations on that. I'm so proud of you on that. And then we're also proud, as you move forward, you continue to learn and grow and get better and expand as you have more opportunities. So we would like to give a gift for you. One is we wrote a best-selling book called Predictable Results. And we have chapters in that book on a variety of different things, all the 10 greatest business problems. And wonderful clients like Randy are in that book for each business problem, telling you the good, the bad, the ugly, and how they navigate it. Randy's chapter is not on scaling. Randy's chapter is on the role of the CEO and how you navigate and change that role and the skills that you need as you grow the company. And so it's a very interesting chapter. There's a card on your table. And if you would like to have that chapter, just put a little check mark and would be more than happy to send that to you. And then I had also talked to you about a research paper that we recently did, which really looked at our data over the last 12 years, 10,000 plans, on what were these mid-market growth companies doing differently that was enabling them to win in market space, get to speed better, execute their growth plans. And so we talk about cross-functional planning, cross-functional collaboration and work, and many other things. There's a lot of good research data in there. Check that as well. We'll be happy to send that to you. And so we'd like to now open it up to some questions. And so if you think about this, you can think about the things that Randy spoke about today, some of the moves that he's making, and feel free to ask him a question. He's kind of the star of the show today. If you have something for me, that's fine too, but he's our star. Or ask anything else that you'd like. So first, I'd like to open it up to the audience. We have a little bit of time, and interact with you, and then we'll go to the poll. We'll go to the questions in the poll. Is there anybody here who has a question that they want to ask personally of Randy? Anybody got anything, or we'll go to the questions all here?
Yeah, there's a good amount there.
Okay. So Randy, the first question is, can you talk about more detail on the cultural shift you had to make when you were first going after Tervis Tumblr? What was the shift, and what did you do?
I think it's sort of tough. I mean, when I go back and remember it, again, we're an entrepreneurial business. So it was really what it came down to is just, we have a saying, you just got to keep showing up. So what it came down to is just making sure we kept going there. And every time they would come back to us and say, look, this isn't right. We built our business on the industrial laundry market. So everything from our billing systems to our order procurement, our e-com platform was wrong. The way we invoiced customers was wrong, shipping. So we had the core product right, but everything else surrounding it was all wrong to service any other customer other than our core base clients. And it was the reason we were unable to break out of that. So I think what we really needed to do was separate a group of individuals and make sure they understood your only job right now is to get this one customer. So we took one rep and said, look, here's your only customer. We took one R&D guy and said, your job is to make sure whatever he comes back with, you completely do everything he says, no matter what it takes, and we'll figure out how to make this stuff later. So what we had to do was just make sure no matter what got put in our path, we got through it and made sure we were just able to produce for this particular account.
Second question you asked, how is this framework different from OKR? It isn't. Measurements are measurements, metrics are metrics. However you use the metrics, you're going to follow the same process. Make sure that you have a good plan. Make sure that you convert that plan into metrics. Make sure that you set up a rhythm of meetings, annual, quarterly, weekly, daily management, using those metrics to drive discussions that will help you make adjustments and achieve your goals. So thank you.
Let me jump in and answer that one too. I just want to say one comment about that. We tried OKRs, we tried KPIs, and I think like all of it works well, but where sort of we found the value in all this is the whole thing, which was using the software, using the planning, having the software available to everybody in the company so it's easy for them to kind of see it, make it translatable for the lowest person in the business to understand at a 5th or 6th grade level what red, yellow, green means and what they're responsible for. So we found KPIs are great, but it's sort of the flavor of the month. And for us, this is a culture where we push this through to our staff before they're even hired. They're reading both rhythm books. They're already getting rhythm training. So for us, this is just part of the way we run the business now. And it's kind of what we call like a secret part of our playbook to what makes us successful.
Thank you. Randy, they'd like to ask you, what did this experience highlight to you as your biggest deficit as an executive?
That changes all the time. So I think that I started out by saying it's a family business. So I'll give you a 30-second background on the company. I was in college. My dad had a company doing emblems when he was when I was growing up. So we grew up in New Jersey, in the sewing capital of the world. His company went under in the late 80s. He took whatever assets he could. We moved to South Florida. Me, my brother, and my dad started it, like I told you, in Medley. He took the assets from the other company, like physically stole them from there and put it in this company. And we started running and selling orders to customers down the road. So what do I know? I left college after one semester and got thrown into a family business. So it was either that or kind of go my own way. So I went this direction because it was the easiest path. The company grew to 50, 60 employees. In the year 2000, my dad passed away. We had to figure out what to do with the business. We just kind of kept doing what we were doing, and that was working for us, but there was no strategy at all, like none whatsoever. I spent probably 6 years going through this kind of iteration of what is a CEO supposed to do. So I'm an avid reader, so I picked up books, I read everything I could possibly read, but the truth is I never could actually understand what my role was. I don't think I still know today, but the Jim Collins kind of approach is get the right people on the bus first. People would tell me that, but I was close and I had my friends working there, so it was all this kind of stuff that was going on in our lives. And now I'm 47, 800 employees, all this kind of stuff we already talked about. The one thing I know is definitely get the right people, have the right strategy, and get out of their way. So that's what it taught me. But at the end of the day, it constantly changes for me all the time. So, I could talk about the million things that we've done wrong, but evidently we're doing something right because we focus on customers and margin and sales. But the truth is that on a daily basis, I question whether I'm the right guy to be running the business. So, and I think that's the biggest thing I could say, that I think I know enough to know that there's a point for me too. And I think that belongs to everybody that works with us. There's a point where everybody kind of Peter principles out in their role. And they either need to get a boss or they need to find somewhere else where they can do a better job. And we're doing them a disservice and myself a disservice if we're not being honest with them in each of their roles.
Got it. Next question was, how do you handle it when employees say they don't have time for the initiatives given the day-to-day firefighting in the business?
It's not really debatable. It's just not. Organizationally, we decided this is what we're doing. And you can ask, I have some people in the room that work with us closely, some longer than others, but it's not even debatable. This is what the organization is doing. So, you're either with us or you're not. And if you're not, unemployment's at an all-time low right now, and there's plenty of places that even a talented employee can go work, but if you're not on board with what we need to get done, then it's not the right place for you.
And one of the things we have done, though, is that in quarterly planning, we actually run a test on his plan and see if any employees are overloaded. And you do make that adjustment before the plan is released.
It sounds cold the way I put it, but the truth is that we've already decided this is what we're doing. And look, if it's not working, like we're in the middle of a 6-year-long ERP rollout, which is the worst possible thing I've ever done to myself. We're sticking with it, and we know that things slide, but the answer of I don't have time isn't an answer. It's just, you have time. You're just not maybe as efficient as you could be, but there's always time. And like I said, it's only 1 to 3 priorities. It's not, we're not overloading them with 80 things. We started doing that, by the way, when we originally put Rhythm in. We had 50 priorities in our first quarter, and they were telling us, you're never gonna succeed. This isn't gonna work. They were right. I was wrong. But at the end of the day, now it's 1 to 3. So it's not that much.
Next question. Did you wind up changing your infrastructure when you had to match your new business?
Every day. I think I just told you that 6-year ERP story. Again, I could go back and tell you everything we've done wrong with technology. But the one thing I will tell you is we invest 8% of our total revenue in technology, and I've been doing that for years. So I'm a huge technology adopter. My issue was as the business was growing, when we were $3, $4, $5, $6 million a year, we would hire access developers, and each one of them would develop in their own silos. So now before I knew it, I had 500 access programs all running with their own individual databases, and we're still in the middle of unwinding all this stuff. So did I have to change our processes every single day? The danger and the mistake that I think we made was not looking far enough out. So we developed for 6 months or a year because it gave us the cheap answer. And again, as a family-owned small business without the kind of strategic planning mindset, we weren't looking 10 years ahead. So we would buy software and shove it in the business, and before you know it, 2 years later, we're already growing out of it, or we're not maintaining it. So this was a huge problem for us, but the simple answer is yes.
Did you have to add or subtract to your executive team to implement this?
Every day. So, I talked to Cindy's husband last night, who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 credit card processing firm, about this exact discussion where we just had to change out our executive director, and we brought in a professional CMO. Every single day, all the time, we continue to do it. And I will continue to do it as the business either stunts or grows where we find it needs somebody to be put in its place.
Got it. Last question. Randy, would you have ever given up trying to land that big account? 40 to 50 trips is a lot of effort. What would it have taken for you to no longer pursue it?
We have, I wish my rep was here that's still dealing with this account, but we have like 60% of their business. So we're still hammering this guy. And as a matter of fact, we had this conversation yesterday about, and it's Tervis in general, about getting going an inch wide and a mile deep instead of a mile wide and an inch deep on this individual customer. I think the answer to this question is no, and primarily because I've been particularly paranoid of losing everything. So I have this kind of fear, and again, I was telling Cindy this today, where like I have this fear of going broke. So it's really like a dichotomy for me. So the answer to the question is we had to diversify. We still have to diversify. Part of our vivid vision is diversification. In our strategy, we have this thing called we incubate new businesses. So we have this thing where my R&D director has to develop one business every year that will develop to get to 8 to 10 million in 10 years. So every year he has to come out with something that's off our beaten path that's not core. We measure non-core every single week. We report it to the whole company. We're super transparent about that. And I think that's just me being paranoid, but knowing that our core business, which is the industrial laundry business, can easily go, I mean, Cintas and Aramark basically own the entire market, and we have 80% of their business. So where is there for us to go? So the only way for us to grow is through new products to new markets or existing products to new markets. So no, the answer to the question is no, but we did have more than one customer, so it's not just Tervis.
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for those fantastic questions, and Randy, I want to thank you for coming and sharing your story. And I hope all of you have achieved at least one thing that you can use, practical thing for your business. Randy and I are here, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We'll be outside the conference, this room. And these are our actual real emails. Feel free we're here to help, and hope that you have wonderful growth opportunities and achieve your dreams and goals. Thank you, and have a great conference.